My wife said coldly. You're an adult. Cook for yourself. I'm not running a restaurant. Then my new recipe involved going to the police with explosive results. I've always found solace in routine. The predictable rhythm of my days, the comforting familiarity of my surroundings, the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. That's what keeps me grounded, what helps me navigate the chaos of the world. My name is Mark, I'm 35, and I work as a construction supervisor, managing large-scale building projects across the city. It's a demanding job, requiring long hours, meticulous planning, and the ability to handle constant pressure. But I thrive on it. I like the challenge of transforming blueprints into reality, of seeing a building rise from the ground, a testament to hard work, precision, and teamwork. My wife, Sarah, is an artist. She would design and do art for companies. Our life together, at least in the early years, was a well-balanced equation. I provided the stability, the financial security, and the predictable routine, while Sarah brought the creativity, the spontaneity, and the vibrant energy. After our marriage, a lot of that changed, or at least from my point of view. I met her back in college. She's a great person and one of the most interesting that I know. She has a good side, as everyone else should know. Every now and then, she mentions if she wants to create a cooking schedule, since I am very particular about a lot of my food. While it was kind, that meant a lot. For now, it was all good, and things were about to be a lot worse. What had taken a long time in my life has made it important to show that our first portion of our marriage was something that was meaningful. The time we got to spend with each other was memorable, and one of the reasons I was so excited to be with her. And to be with her right now made me love her even more. As the years went by, I continued in my old ways, working more and being with her less, and then more things kept piling on each other. But this has always been the story. I have to protect my family. I have to be as safe as I can and do everything in my power to make that work. We were a team. That's why I found it so difficult to understand when that all started to change. To see what all had happened and how to prevent them, I wanted to do everything I could to make the situation better. The long days, the frequent travel, the endless stream of phone calls and emails. It was all part of the job, a necessary sacrifice for the sake of our shared future. What I didn't realize was that those sacrifices were slowly eroding the foundation of our relationship, creating a distance between us that I was too busy to notice. I can't keep doing this to myself, I thought. The warning signs were subtle at first. Sarah started working from home, citing the flexibility and convenience, and she started doing more and more in her office. As she started with this, there was nothing else that would be as impactful and be what was going to follow, at least as I thought. The arguments increased, and the small conversations about the day turned into me listening. It was all too great to see it go. That's great, I would say as she talked about the day. Anything else? But she would never respond. We would always talk in these vague interactions. This happened for many days and weeks, but I did not want to believe it. What if I was just overthinking everything and putting too much on what was not? I remembered one particular incident, though, where I had worked for a very long time and the problems had compounded and gotten more difficult. But then there was the problem to face. I came home and said how tired I was and wanted to order some sort of takeout. Do whatever you want. I'm not running a restaurant, she said coldly. You're a grown-up. Do what you want and figure it out for yourself. It was at this time when I knew everything was not what it seemed. The words, sharp and dismissive, hung in the air. I stared at her, stunned, as the weight of her rejection crashed down on me. All I wanted was a little compassion, a little support, a little bit of connection after a long and exhausting day. Was that too much to ask? Just do whatever you want to do, she repeated as she left the room. I knew there was no way to get through to her. There was nothing that I could say that would change her mind or soften her heart. Something had shifted, something had broken, and I was left standing alone in the wreckage of our failing marriage. As I sat in that kitchen, staring at the empty refrigerator, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I wasn't sad and wasn't angry. Instead, I was simply free. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. That was what I had to figure out. What was I going to do? Where was I going to go? And how? That was the question. It was time to change my life. It was time for a new me. The next thing that I did was something that would change everything that I did. It was time to get everything in order and get to do it all the right way. That was, after all, what was most important, right? Her words echoed in my head as I stared into the refrigerator, my stomach growling with hunger, my spirit aching with loneliness. You're an adult. Cook for yourself. I'm not running a restaurant. It wasn't just about the food. It was about the deeper message, the casual dismissal of my needs, the stark realization that I was no longer a priority in her life. It wasn't about dinner. It was a statement about the relationship and what she wanted from me. I decided to take her words to heart. If I was an adult, then I would act like one. I would take responsibility for my own well-being, my own happiness, and my own future. I'd been complacent, relying on Sarah to fill the roles of caregiver and nurturer, neglecting my own needs in the process. It was time to change that. The first step was food. I'd always enjoyed cooking, but I'd never had the time or the energy to pursue it seriously. With Sarah's words ringing in my ears, I decided to reclaim the kitchen, to transform it from a symbol of neglect into a source of nourishment and self-expression. I started small, experimenting with simple recipes, watching online tutorials, and gradually expanding my culinary repertoire. I learned how to grill a steak, bake a loaf of bread, and whip up a decent stir-fry. The process was both challenging and rewarding, a welcome distraction from the turmoil in my personal life. I also went for a lot of books. The internet was great, but they were now saying it was easy to get lost into something fake, and what was now was to get actual and real support. I found myself enjoying the routine of grocery shopping, of selecting fresh ingredients, of creating something delicious and nourishing with my own two hands. Cooking became a form of meditation, a way to channel my stress and anxiety into something productive and tangible. It was a distraction and a form of therapy. Two birds with one stone. I also started paying attention to my health, something I had neglected for far too long. I joined a gym, started lifting weights, and even tried a few yoga classes, much to Sarah's amusement. I was getting a new wardrobe to better improve myself. Physical activity became a release, a way to channel my frustration and anger into something positive. I needed this time to get things done. The changes in my lifestyle were subtle at first, but they gradually began to have a noticeable impact. I lost weight, gained muscle, and started feeling more energetic and confident. I also rediscovered a sense of self-reliance, a feeling that I was capable of taking care of myself, of creating a fulfilling life, regardless of my relationship status. As I focused on myself, I started to reconnect with old friends, people I had lost touch with during my marriage. I started going to the gym with someone from work and then started just chatting. What was supposed to be one quick gym trip has evolved to something far greater than that. It was amazing. Then, there were more social activities. There were many things to see and do, but not enough. Time was always on the line. Those relationships, as small as they began, gave me the stability that I needed. As everything seemed to fall apart, as everything seemed to drift in the wrong direction, there was hope. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to my transformation. She was still engrossed in her own world, consumed by her work, her friends, and her increasingly secretive phone calls. She barely noticed that I was cooking my own meals, that I was going to the gym, or that I was spending more time away from the house. Her world was far beyond my control. Until one night, as I was preparing dinner, Sarah walked into the kitchen, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else. Was it regret? I was not certain, but what was to come next was something to behold. "What are you doing?" she asked. I smiled, turning to face her, my newfound confidence shining through. "I'm making dinner," I said, holding up a spatula. "It's my turn, remember? You're an adult. I want you to take care of yourself. Since you said it that way, I might as well go all out." She stared at me, her eyes narrowed, as if she was seeing me for the first time. "You've changed," she said, her voice barely a whisper. What I had done up until this point had been with a goal in mind. To be happy for me. For what was I doing, and how could I keep myself safe? That was what she had to deal with, and it will impact her for eternity, or as long as she can remember. I don't know if I could ever come to terms with it. I shrugged, turning back to the stove. "I guess I have," I said. "I finally realized that I'm responsible for my own happiness. And if that means cooking my own meals, then so be it." With that said, the night was starting to go downhill, and I had no clue how to start stopping everything with my whole strength. "I'm not the one who is going to be starting to do things with it," she said. "I really don't know how to feel." Now, there was nothing to do but to keep it moving. Update 1. The initial surprise on Sarah's face gradually morphed into something else, a flicker of, was it jealousy? Or maybe just a dawning awareness that she was losing control. For the first time in months, she seemed to truly see me, to recognize the changes I was making, not as a threat, but as a challenge. The snide remarks and passive-aggressive digs began subtly. If I was making a healthy meal, you need to have something fun once in a while, she'd say to me, making me feel less about the decisions I was making. If I was talking with old friends, she would say that I should remember my priorities, clearly a shot at her. Or just one time, when I was doing yoga, are you trying to become me? At least as I tried to make it out, nothing made any logical sense, but nothing was what I thought. But what was I even able to do with that as I continued to exist? It was tough. She then mentioned some business tips and how my work was supposed to do better. For all her creative pursuits, she was doing it this way, and it seemed as if nothing was able to click. These events would continue for a couple of months, and then everything finally crashed. During the rare times we'd have lunch, as in, what she cooked, would always be something that I was not. Was it something to push me away, or was it just a change of preference? I did not know, and with me not being there was little chance to figure things out. I had to figure out a plan for how to solve this mess, and how I was going to make my life even better. It had to come to an end somehow, and some way to be all over. But I had gotten the call that would change my life. My efforts for a promotion had finally come through, and I was about to make a lot more money. My efforts over all these years were about to pay off in a very big way, and was about to shake everything to the core. She was now going to lose everything with the lies and actions. But now I had an opportunity to capitalize and make everything fall and not take any of the responsibilities. That all started when a text had said, "You need to look at Mark's account." It was from Lucy, and I looked around. I thought what I had was gold, but ended up being trash. At that moment, something was going to click in my head and change what was about to come. The time was coming near, and there was nothing that I wanted to do more. It had run its course and the end was near, but what was that next? It all relied on that message, and it meant everything or nothing. That was the scary part, and something that was definitely going to have to change everything. Final update. The text message from Lucy changed everything. You need to look at Sarah's account. It was vague, cryptic, and sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. What had she found? What new layer of deception was about to be revealed? I waited until Sarah was asleep, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the TV screen. I quietly retrieved her phone, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. I knew I was crossing a line, violating her privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know the truth, however painful it might be. I unlocked her phone, navigating the familiar interface with a growing sense of dread. I checked her text messages, her emails, her social media accounts. Nothing. Everything seemed normal, innocuous, carefully curated to project an image of a successful, independent woman. Then, I remembered something. A few weeks earlier, Sarah had mentioned a new budgeting app she was using, something to help her track her expenses and manage her finances. I had dismissed it at the time, chalking it up to her newfound interest in self-improvement, but now, it seemed like a potential source of valuable information. I found the app, its icon discreetly hidden among a sea of other colorful icons on her home screen. I hesitated, my conscience warring with my curiosity. I knew I shouldn't do this, that invading her privacy was a betrayal of trust, but the need to know was overwhelming. I tapped the icon, and the app opened, revealing a detailed record of her financial transactions, income, expenses, savings goals, and investment portfolios. It was a meticulously organized ledger, a window into her financial life. The world was beginning to open. And that was the problem. All the things were not there for me. As I studied the records, I discovered a series of transactions that made no sense. Large sums of money transferred to an unknown account, labeled simply as investments. The funds were then used in an overseas account that had connections to who knew what. I immediately understood that there was no way this could be. I looked around her past and realized that nothing had ever been me. I am only an auxiliary portion of her life. What was there and what had happened with it? The worst of all was what Lucy had told me at first glance. I realized then that I wanted to make this relationship work. I had tried to. She would never change. I found myself feeling a deep sadness. Then, there was just this huge void, and I had to get myself ready to face it. The money that had supposedly been a part of what to make was now gone, and that meant a lot of what was about to happen could change everything. There was one step to take. That required saying, I need space, going to my apartment, and preparing all the numbers to take to the police and give them what they needed. And now, there was nothing left to be said, and things would then play out as planned. The police ended up arresting her and putting her in a cell after. I felt horrible because a part of me had still loved her. At that moment, something needed to shift with what was there now. There was nothing for me to do, and it was up to those to figure out to get the information they needed to do things. It was time for the story to come together. I was going to put the pieces in place. The final steps were to sell the items we got, close up everything, and get on with it. What more could I do than try and see about the future? Thank you, I told Lucy, and with that, I was able to see what would go down. There would still be problems, but with this, I knew that I can and would get over the problems I was facing and what was said to do. I had to prepare for myself and to move on. Thank you for reading my story and have a great future. This is where my life will begin, and I will be sure to follow the right thing.